So what happens is somebody will make a claim that the AI is presenting copyright material and they would like it removed. And I covered that article. And then the article brought up an issue with that, which is if somebody makes a reference to copyrighted material, how do you determine the difference between the two so you know which one to remove inside of the data set? And that's about as deep as I got into that article. The problem with LLMs forgetting is, so much worse. Let's dig in, shall we? So there's an entire new field that is centered around helping LLMs forget stuff. Do they actually forget stuff? No. No, they don't. Here's why. I can't increase the font size without, if it's too small on screen, I apologize. I'll read it out. Hopefully that's good enough. Selectively removing data from a model without retraining it from scratch turns out to be challenging, both in cases where the model was trained on labeled data, as with traditional ML models, or raw data scraped from the internet, as with LLMs and other generative foundation models. The size of LLMs makes isolating and removing unwanted facts and concepts especially difficult. Because of the terabytes of data and tens of billions of weights, you have to essentially retrain the entire model. And not just the data set, but the weights themselves, so that the influence of the undesired data is adapted so that it can essentially forget it. That's not an easy thing to do. So there was a review paper, a scientific review paper, that went over this. So if you have hallucinating content, misleading content, toxic language, dangerous information, etc., you're going to want the model to forget this stuff, right? But it's not so easy when you have gigabytes upon gigabytes of data just for training and for influencing the model itself. The other thing is that you don't know which data you need to remove, because once you scrape a copyrighted set of data, you have to determine the difference between somebody who covers some data that references copyright data versus the actual copyright data. So as a simple example, you can't just take a keyword out of the training data, do a regex on that keyword, and completely remove it. Now, what do they currently do? What is the current method of having an LLM forget data? The current method is exactly to influence the model. The data isn't actually gone. It continues to live in the data set because companies are unwilling to spend the time and money that's required to retrain the entire model with the data removed from the data set. So what they do is they influence the model to lessen the degree upon which the model references that data. However, the issue with this is that even if you could do that, what you still have, let me see if I can find it. I can't remember where it was in this article, but they have it. They had it in this article. The issue with this is that because the data still exists, you are just one prompt away from reaccessing the data. Even if the model is influenced to weight or prioritize forgetting certain things or not forgetting certain things, just prompt your way through that. And so this was a good example. Microsoft tested one of its unlearning algorithms by measuring how well it could forget copyrighted Harry Potter books. But one complicating factor was the many articles and social media posts that mention Harry Potter but aren't protected by IP laws should that information be erased. And that's if you could even erase the information to begin with. So this is a very serious problem. And let's just take a previous article we went over where Cloudflare demonstrated that, maybe it wasn't Cloudflare, but it was a recent study that demonstrated that over 57% of the internet this year, or maybe it was 2024, is bots. And a huge majority of that is AI bots that scrape the web. We've gone over that many times. We probably will go over it many times more. So think about all the data that lives out there. Do you honestly believe that if you find a piece of data that you want to remove, that it's going to get removed. There was another article that I went over where a poor man who lived in, I believe it was Denmark, went to ChatGepetto, looked up his name, just said like who is, and then put in his name, and ChatGepetto completely hallucinated an entire story where he apparently murdered a bunch of people. He 404'd them, and there was some widespread news about it in the town that he lived, and he was like jailed and stuff. Like this entire thing was just completely made up by ChatGepetto. Now you ask OpenAI to remove that data, how are they even going to do that? How do you remove a hallucinated piece of data like that? So the entire concept of having an LLM forget something, I don't think it's even tenable. But sure, let's speed run. Let's speed run AI. Let's use it for everything. Let's replace entire companies, entire divisions with AI.